Hello everybody, today I'm going to be talking about Millicent's questline. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns along the way, so stick through with me to the end, and I really hope you enjoy.
With your help, I was able to live as my own person, if only in passing.
So Millicent first appears at the Church of the Plague. The name of the location gives a hint as to what her story will entail. She sits propped against the stone wall, clutching at her side. Upon closer inspection, she's actually missing her right arm. Her robes are stained with presumably her own blood. Upon approaching her, she tells us to stay away because she is cursed with the scarlet rot. In order to continue her quest, you will have to speak first to Gowry. He will task you with healing Millicent, and for that he will require a specific item, a golden unalloyed needle. This needle drops from Commander O'Neill. What's interesting to note about this fight is that you have the option of summoning an NPC, adopted daughter Pollyanna. Who is this? Well, we'll revisit her later, but first, when you receive the needle, it has been snapped into two. Did Commander O'Neill do this on purpose? Based on his appearance and description, O'Neill served Radahn, and what we know about Radahn is that he was a great leader who loved his soldiers. Radahn had incredible willpower to withstand the scarlet rot that his half-sister Melania unleashed onto him and all of the surrounding area, Caelid. It's possible that to honour Radahn, O'Neill decided to suffer with him, snapping the only thing that could have alleviated this pain as a sign of solidarity. Or it could be that the needle snapped when he used it upon himself, as O'Neill is suffering with scarlet rot himself. This is shown by him being immune to scarlet rot. When we return to Gowry, he will mend the needle for us and reveal more about Millicent.
Tended to by the witless pests who worship her, or rather her rotting sickness, as a god. A wretched fate, indeed.
These witless pests are the kindred of rot. To some, scarlet rot is a curse, but to others, it's a blessing. For Millicent, she did not choose this fate, it was something she was born with. Speaking of which, Gowry reveals that he is actually Millicent's adopted father.
I'm the one that found her, a mere babe in the swamp of Aeonia. She is one of my dear daughters.
Daughters, plural. Remember Pollyanna from earlier? And how her title was adopted daughter? She is one of those daughters, one of many. When we return to Millicent and offer her the needle to hinder the rot spreading, she agrees.
You ask that I stab myself with the needle to quell the scarlet rot. Never mind. I've decided I would rather trust you than simply continue to spoil from within.
A stranger comes to you and tells you to stick a needle in yourself with the promise of it easing the pain. It's a great risk to take, but it shows how desperate Millicent has become. After reloading the area, Millicent appears much healthier, able to stand and speak with us more. She thanks us for our help, and as a token of gratitude, gives us a talisman, engraved with a scene from a heroic tale. Though born into the accursed rot, when the young girl encountered her mentor and his flowing blade, she gained wings of unparalleled strength. Now take a second to consider the following. Who is this young girl in the talisman? Is it Millicent? She's young, suffering from rot, and we find out later uses a sword. Or could it be Melania? She was cursed with the scarlet rot from birth, and she's arguably one of the most skilled sword users in the game. You'll find this is only the start of the parallel between Millicent and Melania that we're going to explore. Also, who is this mentor? The one who taught our mysterious young girl how to use a sword. To find this out, we need to focus on the specific phrase, flowing blade. Is there such a blade in this game? Well, there might be something close to it. The flowing curved sword. Legends speak of a master of the sword, garbed in blue, and his curved blade that was patterned after flowing water. A figure who wore blue bears a connection to the blue dancer charm as well. The dancer in blue represents a fairy who in legend bestowed a flowing sword upon a blind swordsman. Blade in hand, the swordsman sealed away an ancient god, a god that was rot itself. Whoever this legendary man was, it makes sense that he would be willing to teach Melania. They were both blind, so Melania could learn how to fight in a disadvantaged way after losing one of her senses. And the name of her iconic move, Waterfowl Dance, would suggest that she learned it from a water swordsman who had been blessed by a dancer fairy. After this, Millicent will travel to Gary's shack. Just as Gary mentioned earlier, it appears that Millicent has lost some of her memories, commenting that it seems familiar to her, which makes sense as Gary told us that he raised her here. But where's Gary gone? He's nowhere to be seen. He only appears after you bid farewell to Millicent and reload the area. Surely the self-appointed father and concerned caregiver would want to see his sick daughter, right? Something isn't quite right with Gary. Millicent has now set out on her pilgrimage to follow in the footsteps of someone significant to her.
Now I'm tracing the path Melania took. I should like to meet her. This vanished woman.
She mentions that she still wished she had her right arm, as this would allow her to fight alongside us. You can find a prosthetic arm for her in the shaded castle, the Valkyrie's prosthesis. What a coincidence that a prosthetic weapon arm, specifically the right one, the one that Millicent needs, was just laying around. The shaded castle is presided over by House Marai, a family of executioners. The head of this family being Marley Marai. See, the men of the Marai family were all born sickly. This might be due to the location of the castle. It is embedded in a poison swamp. Marley fell in love with Melania. He romanticised the idea of a chronically sick man being together with a rotting woman, and as seen in his study, he developed an obsession with Melania and offered his services crafting prosthetics for her and doing other things to them. When Marley Marai, Lord of the Shaded Castle, embraced this prosthesis, he claimed to feel the presence of his personal goddess. Luckily, Millicent doesn't have to know about this. She gratefully accepts the arm, and when you meet her later, she remarks on how amazing it is, as if it were her own original arm. With her new arm, Millicent will continue travelling around the map, and she reveals her connection with Melania.
I am of Melania's blood, but in what capacity I know not. I could be sister, daughter, or an offshoot. Whatever the case though, I am certain of a kinship between us.
This confirms our earlier suspicions that Millicent and Melania are related. But who is the father? You may have noticed a recurring theme in the language used to refer to Millicent. Flower, blossom, bud, offshoot, bloom. This isn't just symbolic. Millicent may be an offspring of pollination. When Melania's Scarlet Aeonia bloomed, it dispersed spores throughout Caelid, and if we follow the reproduction process in plants, this pollen would contain Melania's DNA, and as a result would produce children with her genes. But the pollen would need to land on something it could fertilise, and this plant might be the sacramental bud. It can be found where we first met Millicent at the Church of Plagues, an immature bud containing fresh blood, believed to originate long ago from a strain of buds cultivated with youthful sacramental blood. Sacramental in this context means a holy object originating from a deity, so this could be the goddess of Rot's blood, Melania's blood, that was spilled during her battle with Radahn. The sacramental bud also drops from Millicent should you fight her invader form, so it's definitely related to the bloodline in some way. But didn't you think it was strange that Gary just happened to have found Millicent as a defenseless baby in the middle of the Caelid swamp? Unless he knew she was there, growing from the plant.
She is a bird, green and undeveloped, waiting to flower into magnificence. In truth, before her, I'd never seen a bud of such superior quality. She might very well outshine her sisters.
Before her? Superior quality? Why does this sound like some sort of experiment? So by now you may have gathered that Gary is definitely hiding something, and when you go to purchase from his shop at this point, there will be a spell that contains all the answers. This one. And Gary is the only merchant who sells this sorcery. You cannot attain this anywhere else, and you may recognise this ability as it has been used by another type of enemy in the game. If you attack Gary, you will unlock the secret that he has been hiding.
Meet again, you and I. There are countless bests to
Gowry's body fades away, but reveals the corpse of a kindred of rot. Pests, as in the witless pests he referred to earlier, the ones who worshipped rot. I discovered that the word Gowry in Hindi means white, which would be a literal match to the name of pale pests. Most surprisingly though is that Gowry will respawn, but if you attack him again he will chide you, saying even if you try to kill him he will just simply come back.
Killing me is but an exercise in futility.
And he does. He has the power to possess other living beings. He may be similar to someone like Shabriri. Shabriri is chaos incarnate, so Gowry might be the equivalent for rot. We have now reached a crucial point in understanding the events that are taking place in the storyline. If you have been following Millicent's path, you will get the option to either assist Millicent or challenge her. Now, this is a development that a lot of players weren't expecting. It's a little unclear as why we have the choice to turn on this character, who we've shared memories with fighting alongside. And to understand why, we need to once again return back to Gowry.
He is to meet them very soon, her sisters, and when she does, she'll be defeated surely, and begin to flower.
So Pollyanna, the adopted daughter NPC summon, is not the only sister. The fight that will ensue will have all 4 sisters of Millicent.
If you happen to be present for the girl's fight with her sisters, I ask that you side with the sisters and kill Millicent. It must be done by your hand, no other.
Millicent has the potential to bloom into another form. Like Melania does with the Scarlet Ionia, she transforms into the goddess of rot. However, this is not an easy process.
Millicent trusts you, rather deeply in fact. Sever that trust. Nurtured by betrayal, her bud will flower most vividly.
The ability will only activate under extreme duress. Melania did so as a last resort against Radahn, and when we managed to down her at the end of Phase 1. So Gowry theorises that if Millicent sees us turn on her, it will elicit such a strong emotion, it will cause her to transform.
When Melania ascends to godhood, Millicent too shall be reborn, as a scarlet Valkyrie.
Gowry is the reason why you have to fight her. It's for his own selfish gain. If you choose to defeat her, she will indeed transform at the end of the fight. Her body will be enveloped inside a flower, just like Melania. You will receive Millicent's prosthesis with one of the most beautiful item descriptions. The despair of sweet betrayal transformed Millicent from a mere bud into a magnificent flower, and one day she will be reborn as a beautiful scarlet Valkyrie. And you don't receive the entire arm prosthetic as you originally gave her. It's just the hand, frozen in place. The position of the fingers is gently curved, locked into a fist that once raised a sword aloft. Returning to Gowry, you will find him dead, or rather his vessel abandoned. He drops the Flock's Canvas Talisman, which depicts a group of figures, a flock, in worship, praying to their goddess of rot. If you still aren't convinced that Gowry is connected to the Kindred of Rot, there is an alternate version of this talisman that you can find in the Crystal Tunnel, guarded by 2 Kindred of Rot, which would suggest a connection. Gowry was orchestrating a sick experiment to create a daughter of Melania and continue to spread this rot all over the lands between. He didn't actually care for the welfare of Millicent and her sisters. He just wanted to succeed in his god project. Now, if you choose to assist Millicent, as you should, you discover these sisters, Mary, Maureen, Amy and Pollyanna, have all been manufactured just like Millicent was. But the difference was they failed to develop the skills to become a Valkyrie. The 4 sisters were born in the swamp of Ionia, and yet those buds were doomed to never bloom. So as a result, Gowry commanded them to do his bidding. That's why Pollyanna assists us with the Commander O'Neill fight. Gowry ordered her to do so, to help us acquire the needle, heal Millicent, gain her trust, and then hit her with the big betrayal. After assisting Millicent, she is found quietly, holding her side like when we first found her. This has come full circle.
I took out the needle myself. Tell whoever put you up to this that if I am to flower into something other than myself, I would rather rot into nothingness as I am.
So Millicent pieced together that this whole ordeal was planned, and chose to defy Gowry by succumbing to the rot and not embracing it. She asks you to leave her, so that she may not harm you when the rot inevitably takes over her body. Reloading the area will confirm that Millicent indeed took out the needle, as you are able to pick it up and see the updated item description. Bears no trace of befouled blood, but is faintly moist with dew. There is something I must return to Melania, the dignity, the sense of self that allowed her to resist the call of the scarlet rot. That something she wanted to return is, in fact, the needle. And interestingly enough, if you take Millicent's needle to the flower that Melania left, you will receive Miquella's needle. To honour Millicent, you finish the quest that she originally set out to do. The needle is a symbol of defiance against the rot. It's easy to be frustrated that we can't save Millicent. She has a very in-depth quest and a lot of interactions with our character, so it makes sense that you want to have a better end for her. But this is a From Software game. I hope this helped explain some things around Millicent's questline. It does involve a lot of back and forth between NPCs. It's not really very intuitive. Please share anything you found when doing this questline. Something unsolved I found was, why is there a flower outside Melania's boss room that has the Traveller's armour set next to it? It's the same set that Millicent wears, but if her physical body rests at a different part of the Halig tree when we defeated her, why are her clothes up here? Thank you everyone so much for watching, and as always, a big thank you to my channel members. Reeses5, Jawbite, Grim, Kyle Coldwell, Manu999, Hellborn Hero, Rotoyo Blom, David Romero, Exiled Turtle, Mr. Radballs, Bloodfallen223. Thank you guys so much. Bye guys.